It's the question that's baffled philosophers for centuries when it comes to close encounters between human beings. What's the difference between making love and just having sex?
That's right. Today on This or That, we're picking apart intimacy, and our resident psychologist, Sabina took to the streets to find out how the public behave in the bedroom.
Well, I suppose making love, you're in love with the person. Sex is something which you could have randomly with, be it male or female, depending what turns you on.
Having sex with random people is just having fun. Making love is to someone you're really deeply in love with, you're committed to, you're the only one to be with them.
Can committed couples ever have just sex?
I think so, yeah. There are often instances where circumstances don't actually give you the opportunity to put your heart and soul into it, especially when you've got children.
So couples that are married can have sex sometimes, make love other times?
Yeah, it's not always special, I guess. Yeah. Sometimes it's just something you got to do.
What do you think having sex looks like?
Have a faith?
No.
What it looks like.
Thank you to all those people who answered those very difficult questions.
Respect.
Respect. For more on this, psychologist Sabina who's asking those questions, joins us live from Melbourne. Hi, Sabina, great to see you.
Good morning.
OK, we're going to talk about birds and the bees. I mean, how do you define the act of having sex? Do we need a definition?
Don't look at me, please don't look at me.
So I haven't brought any graphics, don't worry,
okay,
Kylie. But really when we talk about having sex, we're talking about a desire for physical contact with another person. And often it is very much about self-gratification and gratifying our own sexual urges. And not always, but typically sex disregards or minimises the emotional connection or the bond that two people have. It's far more physical than it is emotional.
OK, so if sex is more about meeting physical needs in the list you just showed us, how do we then define making love?
So making love is really, I mean, the term speaks for itself, doesn't it? It's about how do we create a sense of love and connection between people. So it's an expression of love, it's a desire to pleasure and nurture somebody else, and that means parking our own needs to some degree. If we're only thinking about what we need, I wouldn't define that as making love. And in order to make love, there needs to be a level of trust, and I think vulnerability is also key in making love.
Does gender change the way you perceive intimacy?
So, you know, we always hear that saying that men are only after one thing, and I think that does the gender discussion a disservice. I know certainly in my clinical practice I see many couples who have mismatched libidos. That's a common story for a lot of couples. But it's not always the man who desires more sex or more lovemaking. Often women have a higher libido than their partner. So I'm here, I guess, to debunk the myth that it's really a gender discussion. I think it's more about individual differences and libido as opposed to gender.
OK, are sex and love mutually exclusive, or is making love only possible with someone we deeply care about?
I think making love really does tend to hinge on a relationship built on connection and trust and intimacy and vulnerability. However, it's really, of course, it's possible for long-term committed couples to practice just sex. I mean, sometimes we don't have time, sometimes we don't feel like anything more, and as long as we're communicating between each other, you know, I just really looking for wham bam, thank you ma'am tonight, and that's an agreement between two people, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with having sex between a committed and loving relationship.
Sure. Are there other ways to make love without the intimate act?
I think making love is so much more than bedroom behaviour. So one exercise is to look into your partner's eyes for 5 minutes with no words. That is one of the most vulnerable, confronting and intimate things we can do with a partner. But of course things like making a meal, a cup of tea, giving your partner a massage, there are a lot of things that do nurture and foster a sense of connection and love between two people without so-called acts of making love as we know it, or sex.
Well, Sabina, I thought I was uncomfortable during the honey boo-boo segment. but we've ramped it up. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
You know, Larry, you know, sometimes you feel like Chinese takeaway, sometimes you feel like pizza, sometimes you feel like, you know, a hot roast. So it really is dependent on what you are selecting from the menu as to whether it's sex or making love.
Wow,
I'll
you
leave
really
you
are
with that.
the United Nations of takeaway menus right there, Sabina. Thank you. All there.
I love Tom. I'm putting you in it. Tom, our floor manager, said the last time he stared into his partner's face for 5 minutes without saying anything. It's usually when you're angry with them, isn't it?
Was that about, I thought you were talking about Kylie. You're talking about your partner.
Well, I assume he was talking about his partner.
I thought you said... Oh, sorry.
Although he does really tend to stare at us like with beady eyes, not saying anything a lot.
Thank you.